Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure the Zoomers are on.
You're on Zoomers.
Are we ready to go? Okay, thank you. Welcome to the October chapter meeting of the Cross Timbers chapter of the Texas Master Naturalists. My name is Sharon Hamilton, and I'm presiding today. I'm going to be the president today. I'm glad to see several of you who are trainees here, and if you're a guest, would you please raise your hand? We won't make you stand up, but we'd like to know who you are. Yes. I was actually looking at the people in the back. Josh Daisy, and I believe you have a trainee that you're very close to here, right? Who else? Yes. Katrina Tompkins, and what brings you here today?
I got the newsletter, I volunteered for the newsletter, and so I'm interested in
Great.
how to live in.
Well, you're in the right crowd, I'll tell you. For those. Yes. Becky Schiffer, what brings you here, Becky? Kind of, okay, well, thank you for coming, and if you would like some refreshments, then go ahead and get them. We're never mind, I ramble. So our first order of business is we would like to welcome our new, and she's new because this is only her second year, and I don't know how many hundreds of years our previous AgriLife sponsor had been a sponsor. But Jacqueline Jones Doyle is here tonight to help us. To make.
I'll get over here where everybody can see me, including the Zoom guys. So, good evening, everyone. As Sharon stated, I'm Jacqueline Jones Doyle, I'm the Ag and Natural Resources Agent for here in Tarrant County and y'all's AgriLife sponsor. This is my second year with it. Last year we were kind of figuring things out, especially coming out of COVID, and then kind of moving in and helping, excuse me, with the hybrid situations on things tonight. So for those of you that are on the Zoom tonight, if you have any questions, please post those in the chat box. I will be monitoring those throughout the presentation and relaying that on to the presenter. I asked for a few minutes tonight because I'm not sure if anybody has seen the email that has gone out about the Fort Worth Stock Show booths.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, wonderful. To give you a little backstory on that, about 4 years ago now, AgriLife now has a booth at the Fort Worth Stock Show in conjunction with the Ag Ventures with Texas Farm Bureau. Every year we have kind of added a little bit to it. AgriLife has a curriculum that is called Path to the Plate, and it's literally what it says. We're talking about commodities from pasture to plate. And it's not just beef, chicken, protein aspects of things. We're talking anywhere from seafood to fruits to vegetables, honey, the whole 9 yards on that. We are kind of expanding that partnership with Fort Worth Stock Show as well as Farm Bureau this year. We are bringing in seafood aspects of things, grapefruit, which is a state fruit of Texas, as well as Texas viticulture. So great aspects of things this year. But what I'm needing from y'all, I'm needing some help as far as for either manning the booth on the weekends, having an opportunity to sit down and visit with people that come by that area, talk about Master Naturalists, talk about Texas commodities and how it all kind of turns and goes hand in hand. But in conjunction with working that, we are also partnering with Fort Worth Stock Show for the school tours. So basically they'll have on average about 1,200 students a day for about 8 days come through the different areas at Fort Worth. There are multiple stations that we need some help with. That does include some of the commodities and stuff that we talked about a minute ago, but it also includes some of the protein aspects of things, and it'll be in different areas. The more volunteers that we have, the easier this thing works. So if you're interested and if you've seen that link, please sign up for it. If you sign up for it, more information will be coming to you on that in terms of training for either the booth and commodities that are presented in the booths, or if you're willing to help with the school tours as far as the commodities and the different stations on that. So that would be more of a species or topic specific on that. So any questions on any of this?
What are the hours on the weekends?
9 to 1 and 1 to 5. And
What's the parking?
Oh, she got some.
she got questions, she's got them. So here's the thing, we do get parking passes and we do get day passes for you.
Yeah.
They are limited for us on that, so if there are days that two of y'all or times that y'all can carpool, that makes it easier. So that way there's one car pass for y'all, but we will also have the day passes for you as far as getting in on that as well. So
And last year, the parking was really close. It was very nice, so thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, if you sign up for it at the training, and I believe I have that training kind of preliminary set for December 6th, we'll go over the information, we'll go over the layout of where the parking is, where the booth is at, and if you help with the school tours, where the different commodities kind of will be stationed on that. So you have an idea, you'll have your map, you'll walk away with the training manual as far as the different talking points on things. So we're gonna get you prepared for it as much as possible, but as we all know, the best laid plans never go as planned. So any other questions? All right, well, I look forward to seeing who all signs up, getting to know and working with y'all more on that, and working with the stock show. It's always a lot of fun watching those kids do some of the stuff. So, but that's what I have this evening, so and I'll be on the computer.
Thank you, thank you. And last year, our board did approve this volunteer work since it's for AgriLife, which is one of our two main state sponsors. We approved it for volunteer hours, and we would appreciate it if, and to make it really count, wear your name tag, wear your CTMN t-shirt, and encourage them to work, pollinators, throw that in, and it is kind of fun to work at the stock show. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yes.
We're going to have an official business meeting, and I have some slides here to help me remember what I need to say. Okay, so whatever the time is, if the secretary could write at 7:09, starting our business meeting. Thank you. No, that's fine. That's fine. Just one. Okay, here's a clicker. Oh, there's a clicker now. Okay, where do I point the clicker?
At the computer.
Excellent. Oh, it's been one of those weeks, y'all. So here's our treasurer's report as of September 30th. We have accounts at Wells Fargo Bank. And again, I'd like to thank Chris Castoro. I'm not sure he's Zooming anymore, but he moved 2 months ago and he still attended our October board meeting to help us out for another.
I'm here.
Reports. And our checking account balance is $8,155.06. Our savings account, it's behind there. Just close that window.
It's not sharing, that's the problem.
Oh.
Give me just a second, I'm working on it.
We're learning. If anybody wants to volunteer.
Okay, it's back.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now we're good.
Our savings account balance is $15,804.58. And I believe a few years ago, our past president, Mr. Bill Collins, put some of that money into the savings account. To be honest with you, it makes about 13 cents a month. So the board may just put it all back in the same pile, because that's definitely not keeping up with inflation. So the amount we have on hand, thanks to the very good stewardship of our previous boards, is almost $24,000 right now. Next slide. Oh, I'm supposed to forward.
Hit the button on
Right.
the right. There.
I am. You've got to turn it on first. I'll tell you what, one of the best things I ever did was retire from teaching. Okay, we had a budget. It took the board several months to come up with, to create a budget. That means it took me. And so in January, we approved this budget, and right at the top, it says proposed for 2022. And our income you can see up there, and our projected income from the NADA raffle, from membership dues. And as you can see, in order to have, and I learned this, in order to have the income be as big as the expenses, I had to go ahead and say, we're gonna take income from our reserves. So that was already done in this year, in 2022. Okay, and y'all have heard this too many times, but I've never taken an accounting course, but Chris said, oh no, you never have a budget that goes in red, you say income from reserves. So we've already dipped into our reserves somewhat. Our expenses for this year, and again, a budget is a projection. It's not something that you can say is set in stone, but we have more hospitality expenses for two reasons. One is, rather than having the only option being food brought from home, we are buying some food that's prepackaged. Thank you again, COVID. That's one of the things we've changed. Now, we are having a few people bring some food. That's great, but you've got an option. And room rental, we will be renting our holiday party room, and we haven't spent all of this year, but it's because we already had money left carried forward from the Botanic Garden. Training books, donations that our chapter was ready to make for chapter projects. We have been an annual meeting sponsor every year. And then for travel and for initial training scholarships. And so, because we took some money from reserve, our budget was balanced. Next slide. Oh, me. Does it turn off? It's still green. Which one are you?
Hey, at least you didn't do it right away.
You remember when they told us the computer was gonna make life so easy? And now we're up to 3 people working on this. Thank you.
Sharon,
There have been some questions and answers. As of today, as far as I know, 84 members paid their 2022 dues. The trainees that started and are almost finished with their program, there are 29 trainees. They have all paid, so they are paid in their dues. And the membership from our dues accounts for 26% of our annual income. If you want to know where the rest of it comes from, most of it is coming from the training fees. That's a different issue than what we're here about tonight. We do get some a small amount of donations, a few $100s in the donations for the NADA raffle. We have not paid the Botanic Garden for 2 years. We have to pay them whenever they send me the invoice.
To me here.
To me here, to me here. We are grandfathered as a nonprofit at $50 a meeting. If you wanted to rent this room and you weren't a nonprofit that's already grandfathered, you would get this room for the low price of $300. In 2021, our expenses were about $6,100. That's according to Evan Vaughn. This year, our budgeted expenses were $6,500. By raising the dues from $20 to $25, with 84 of us paying our dues, that will raise an additional $420 in income. Our remaining expenses this year, the holiday party. And then next spring, we'll be doing, we'll have the membership and we'll be planning for the award ceremony and those activities. Next slide. That went backwards.
Frank, you should just be able to roll them out.
There we go. Again, we'll have to pay the Botanic Gardens. We did not have to pay them for the past 2 years. We need to purchase, some of us on the board, and this has not been approved yet, but we will need to purchase some additional equipment, some hardware to strengthen our ability to run hybrid meetings. As you can see today, we're fortunate to have Jacqueline here, and those of you that are zooming can't see her gear that's set up, but even Mr. Keeney, who knows a lot, said, "This is my stuff." And we're also, we've had an issue because we're trying, we set as our priority Zooming and recording training. And with the fact that we didn't have enough equipment meant that we took meetings as a second tier, because we wanted to make sure we got those trainees getting all their hours done. And they have, they've utilized that function very well, and we appreciate that. We need bookkeeping software, and even during this calendar year, our hospitality expenses have increased. Even when you buy your stuff at Costco, expenses have increased. So all of that is background. We need a motion and a second to raise and this was again voted on by the board and announced 2 months ago for you all.
Sharon, there is a.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm still in the ladies' room and I found some of these keys. So if you lost your keys, they'll be at the front desk, just holler at me, you can get them back.
What kind of car is that?
Okay.
Sorry, when was the last time dues were raised?
Oh, we need to stay there.
Thank you.
Mic, which mic, that mic?
No.
I can't hear the audience.
They cannot hear me.
You're way too quiet.
Some of you who've been here a lot longer than I have, when was the last time dues were raised?
Right?
Never.
Never?
I believe since the inception, perhaps,
23 years ago?
since the beginning of the chapter, they have been $20.
Even
I
the
remember
original
paying a
members
20-year K.
couldn't remember.
Which could say something about us.
We can't remember it.
Okay, there was another statement. Outgoing treasurer stated that the October board meeting, that the expected additional expenses can be covered by our surplus of money in the bank without raising dues.
Thank you.
It's not even 50 cents a month.
But before we discuss, we need the motion and we need the second, and then we have the official discussion. We have a motion from Ryan Wiggins. We have a second from Bill Collins. Thank you, and we're writing that down, Secretary, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Yes.
Have we tried getting donations for package ships and what have you?
We have not.
you mentioned Costco, I'm sure Costco would be willing to donate a big box of packaged treats.
You are now in charge of that.
Can anyone hear Chris? Can anyone hear me?
Every month, every year, every month.
I don't know, I feel like with our surplus money, we could do more scholarships and things like that and not use our surplus money for us to have dues here.
Thank you. Yes,
So when are dues due? And it is just once a year, correct?
it's once a year. We will begin, or if there's not already a PayPal button for you to pay your 23, I'm just gonna say 23 dues already on there, you can begin paying your 23 dues. We'd like to have them all paid by the end of January. If that is not convenient, then we can talk. And the bylaws are about to change. We're gonna vote some more. We're gonna vote next month on officers, and then we're gonna vote in January on the bylaws. And so I'm hesitating to say exactly when, because I believe the due date has changed in the state bylaws. End of January.
I
Yes,
just want to say that for the new class, you guys are paid through next year.
right. New class is paid. There being no further discussion.
Hold on, just a second.
How are we voting online?
On chat.
Mary Beth has figured out how they can vote online. And
Is anybody there? Can you hear me?
Chris, hold on. Okay, Chris, now try to go in.
Hello?
There it is. Okay, Chris, I'm going to hear you. What's your question?
Can anybody hear me? Can anyone hear me? Okay,
Hello? I can hear you, Christopher.
I don't think
Chris,
anybody
I'm
else can hear
online.
me.
They were talking to you in the room saying they could hear you.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, I never said that the added expenses we expect should be covered by our current funds. And also the rate of inflation, it doesn't really apply year to year if you've never raised it. I mean, we've been at $20 a year forever, right?
So do we expect to go another 20 years without a raise, or how, like,
Right.
that's what I'm
I
saying,
think
it's
it's ridiculous.
unprecedented.
I think it's kind of silly to say that going from 20 to 25 is more than the rate of inflation when you've got, I don't know how many years behind you that we've never had a raise. So
Yeah, so you're asking new members to take on a
no, I'm asking
25%
everyone.
increase.
I think everyone should take on an additional $5 a year.
Yes, but then the majority of the never mind. I think it's interesting to call it silly, to use those words when it's the state comptroller. These are unprecedented inflation times. So our economy, our membership is struggling as it is. If you look
Yeah.
at the Texas comptroller, the major things that have, this type of inflation hasn't been seen since 1979. And the majority of it is on food and energy, which is gas and food, which hits individuals and homes, not hospitality costs. So
Okay.
to ask for this right now at this time for a 25% increase feels disrespectful in a sense, especially when we're supposed to be increasing our inclusivity and our outreach programs. To not listen to that people are being impacted on their grocery bills, and to ask for such a large increase without providing itemized costs. Like if someone is a member and a shareholder of something, usually they get debriefed on how these impacts, like
We're not
especially if
we're not
it's an
talking about $5 a week or $5 a month. We're talking about $5 for the year.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
operations here. So
So-
with a budget, usually you present an operations cost and a strategic plan, which I
Yeah.
don't see here. And I think it's not the monetary value per se that's even an issue right now or a cause for concern. I think it's the lack of like pre-planning, so to speak, because typically when these decisions are made by companies and larger organizations, there's a plan in place. Like I spoke to a financial advisor about the money y'all have in place right now that you do have in reserves. Like the fact that it's only gaining 13 cents a month is obscene, that it could be placed in something far greater that is actually gaining a return for us to use, where we can take the gain off of that to fill that void that she was saying she had to take from our, quote unquote reserves. We could have used interest to fill that gap.
Marcy, I think that you make good points. I think that there's separate questions, whether we should take the reserve money and put it in a CD or something.
Well, no,
that
I think that it's things that need to be said to people, because you're asking people to give, like I said, it's not the $5, but there's no, people need to know that there's no plan. It's without rhyme or reason. It's just saying, oh,
we are
I need
closing
this.
discussion on Zoom to let discussion commence within the live meeting.
Great idea. Raise the news. And if there's any kind of in the chapter
That has trouble paying the extra $5, I think that.
Does anybody here think that they can't make the extra $5 for the year? I mean, certainly we can help them out.
Yeah, less than 42 cents a month.
Yeah, I mean, and if you compare this to the Master Gardeners, or just Sierra Club, or NIPSA, we are like $10 less than them with the increase.
I also am gonna close discussion with Frank's comment there, and I'm also gonna put my pitch in to everyone present and everyone present on Zoom, that we on the board are working as hard as we can. We feel like we are pre-planning, but we would welcome people to contribute by participating in board committees. We still have an opening for outreach, where we would welcome you to have you on the hospitality committee to find some less expensive ways of providing refreshments. And there will be an election next month for 3 offices. You need to be a certified member. You cannot be a completing trainee unless you're also getting your 40 hours plus 8 of advanced training. And so those folks cannot be officers. Trainees, unless you trainees have 40 hours of service plus your 8 hours of training to be certified by the beginning of 2023. You cannot serve as an officer, but you can serve on the committees, or you can serve as a director. And I know we would be grateful to have some folks who are willing to do the research and do some presentations, and if necessary, do more planning. I can tell you I've spent about 6 or 8 hours on this topic in the last 3 months, and it is. And we have a budget. And that has not always been the case. So I'm going to go ahead and call for the votes. Do you folks on Zoom know what you're doing? Those of us here in the room, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, and Bill Collins is going to count. I may call on Brent as another past president. Hester could not be here. She was going to help, but I'm calling on the past presidents. All right, so we've had the motion, we've had the second. With all in favor of raising dues to $25, raise your hand.
For those of y'all that are online, Mary Beth is posting a poll, and you will vote on the poll.
34.
Okay,
That's thing counts.
34. Those who are opposed to raising dues $5, please raise your hand. I think we have a few abstentions, which is totally fine. So we got that recorded for those present.
34, yes. Were there any no's?
We had 0.
Okay.
I saw 0.
No,
I did not know those questions. We'll get them from Mary Beth. I think what you'll do, Glenda, is, X number of people approved and X number of people opposed, and whether or not the motion passed. So I feel like we're on American Idol here.
Have them raise their hand.
Has everyone on Zoom who wanted to vote had the chance to vote?
If you're on the chat, if you have an opportunity to hit the raise your hand icon, please go ahead and do that at this time for yes.
Is that even people who already did the poll?
Don't worry with the poll.
Ignoring the poll.
Ignore the poll.
Maybe tell them how to raise their hands.
You might have to say it to, I don't want to take care of her.
Yeah, hit your little raise your hand. We're raising our hand if we approve.
If you are approving and yes to the increase, hit the icon to raise your hand.
And who's counting that? I am. Good, I'll write it. We can write it down.
Take a sheet off.
21 so far. Okay. 20.
People are telling how to do it.
For everyone online, you can raise your hand under reaction.
22. Okay, we have 22 that are in favor. 20. All right, y'all hold your horses here. Do not change your mind right now. Okay. We're gonna.
26.
Y'all are as bad as teenagers.
We just figured out where it was. You have to find that.
Yeah,
Raise your hand.
sometimes it's difficult to find. Okay, going once, going twice.
That's it. That's it. 31. All right.
31, 4.
All right.
Now, if you have raised your hand, please clear that.
Yeah, if you raise your hand, put your hand down or click that button again. Click the lower hand according to Janelle Hill. Oh, yay, the number's going down.
60, so I'm maybe.
A couple have raised their hand.
I want to learn
That's
about
why
loss.
everybody's clearing out.
Yeah, they're clearing. All right, 3 more of you need to lower your hands. Okay, down. Lower.
Erica and David, if you would, please unclick your raised hands.
How many people are on Zoom?
Hold on, I got it. Okay.
All right, good.
All those opposed, please raise your hands.
If you are opposed to the $5 increase, raise your hand. Only if you are opposed. If you are not a dues paid member, please do not vote. Says I'll pay the $5 just to get onto the Wasps.
Okay, going once, going twice. So
So we had 4 opposed.
4 opposed.
So what's our total that are in favor?
65.
6 favor, 4 opposed. The motion passes. I am now closing the business meeting. And we can get on to why everybody's here.
I'm Mary Beth, senior committee. You want to go through it? Okay, you got that?
Thank you, Sam.
Okay. Well, go here, go talk to Mary Beth.
You thought it was a trip to go someplace.
Oh, the canoeing, you show up at the nature center, you canoe for a few an hour and a half or so, 2 people on a canoe. You have guidance, you have life jackets, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course. So if you're interested at all, have questions, see me after the meeting. It's my pleasure to have Sam Kieschnick here with us tonight. He is an urban wildlife biologist with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And he takes care of the Dallas area. As you know, we have our sponsor, Rachel Richter, who is an urban biologist who takes care of the area that we are in. Sam is the sponsor for the North Texas Master Naturalist. He had a nice article in a publication online called Shout Out BFW. He says, I dedicate time each and every day to going outside. I love that. I think we all identify with that. This is a habit I carve out daily. And here's some pictures of Sam doing his thing, working with adults, working with kids, waiting for the great dragonfly to come by. And I like to, am I doing okay? Share the screen. Oh. I'm not doing okay. Thank you. You're learning. Thank you. There you go. Thank you, Jane. You're welcome.
Help remind me, wave at me.
All right. There is a Facebook group, DFW Urban Wildlife. How many of y'all have gone to that? I just found it. Okay, so let me tell you something, a little background. I am a big fan of humor. I just have to tell jokes all the time. It's kind of like going outside. Rodney Dangerfield once said that if you look up the word ugly in the dictionary, there's a picture of him there, right? Y'all don't like Rodney as much as I do. So I looked up. Wait, that's not supposed to be that. Okay. I looked up iNaturalist. on Wikipedia.
That's good.
Let me get all this stuff down here. There we go. Wasps, or as my son used to call them, waspies.
Good, awesome, cool. Frank, I've got that here. Cool. Thank you, buddy. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Hopefully you can hear me all right. If you can hear me on Zoom, please tell me your favorite color. And also thank you for the business meeting part. You got to see a little bit about how the sausage is made. And that is how these organizations work. When we do our North Texas Master Naturalist meetings, we have these business meetings, and it feels a little grueling at times, but it is necessary. It is necessary for these groups. So we're going to talk tonight about wasps. So real quick, while we're getting some tech stuff, does anybody have any stinging stories about wasps? Raise your hand if you have ever been stung by a wasp. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, good. I can see several folks. Is there anyone in particular that has a fond memory of being stung by a wasp? Would you?
I was just in my front yard, just kind of doing whatever. It was like 7 something in the morning, and about 8 of them ambushed me in the head at once. And yes, I still made it to work that day. It was just kind of a lot.
They said, charge, and all of that. Wow.
Run away, I tried, and they got me.
They got you.
Succession.
So what did you do? Were you running? Did you stop it?
Let it happen, and was just like, okay, I'll just, since there was nothing I could.
They're very good. That's very Zen. You said, I can take it. Universe, I can take it. Okay, very good. Anybody else have a story about wasps that being stung by one? If you wouldn't mind, Banjo.
Okay, so I was out mowing the lawn in the backyard, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna defer a little bit from the wasp thing, because this is really a bumblebee.
Okay.
But
And you're tearing up a little bit too. Incredible. Just remembering it.
really funniest home videos.
Sure.
It was stinging me because, in the stomach. Because I messed up, it's a ground nest area, I guess, under the shed. And that caused me to do some sort of wild flipping thing, screaming kind of like this, "Ah!" in my joint. And I tripped on the back patio.
Ooh.
And that caused one of my knees to completely
Shatter.
have a bubble badly, and I was screaming, ouch, 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 and the bee was still stinging. More. I was trying to get the bee out of my shirt, I was trying to get the back door open while I was laying on the patio, so there was screaming. And of course, I have a very fond memory that I will never forget.
That's good, memorable, a memorable experience with wasps. I'm sure that all of you, and I saw lots of hands, fondly remember being stung by a wasp. And there's actually a pain index for this. There's something called the Schmidt Sting Index. An entomologist named Justin Schmidt came up with this index for it. When you look at the different levels, there are 4 levels, and I'll read this for you. If you're stung by a fire ant, he says it's light, ephemeral, almost fruity. A tiny spark has, oh, thank you so much, Peter. A tiny spark has singed a single hair on your arm. Pleasant, almost a pleasant experience. You'll notice up here at level 1, sweat bees, you may be under the idea that native bees don't sting. Well, let me double dare you to grab a native bee. It will sting you if you grab it. Now, they're not overly defensive. They don't have a nest or a hive that they're protecting. But if you grab a native bee, it lets you know. It lets you know that it's there. Level 2, looking at one of our European honeybees or Chinese honeybees, an Apis species, he says the oven mitt has a hole in it when you pull the cookies out of the oven. Again, fairly pleasant experience. Fairly pleasant experience. Then we start jumping up a little bit. Level 3, bad and unrelenting. Someone is using a power drill to excavate your ingrown toenail. So that level of pleasantness has changed a little bit when we get to level 3. These are our paper wasp, Polistes, we have these. Red ants, has anybody ever been stung by a red ant before? Also, I don't know if it is a power drill to excavate your ingrown toenail, but unpleasant. Then we get to level 4. And level 4, the tarantula hawk wasp, he says blinding, fierce, shockingly electric. A running hair dryer has just been dropped into your bucket. So level 4 is where we start to jump up in scale. One of the things that you may have noticed is wasps occupy a lot of this list. Wasps occupy a lot of the different levels, and especially, he's got the whole list of different things that he has been stung by that are different levels. Wasps come to the top. People hate wasps. Normal people hate wasps. Now, you're here, you're not normal. Okay, let's get that out of the way. If you have an interest in this sort of stuff, you probably are not very normal. But normal people, if you think about it, normal people hate wasps. And this goes back, way back. The father of biology, Aristotle, in give or take 300 BC, says that hornets and wasps are devoid of the extraordinary features which characterize bees. This we should expect, for they have nothing divine about them as bees have. He was stung.
He was stung.
He was stung. He's got a sting story, and it sucks. I know, it has an intense story there. It's not just anecdotal. It's not just, and I'll keep caution from it. It's not just anecdotal, this. So there has been research done on this. This was a ecological entomology journal access that actually looked at the public perception of bees versus wasps. People love bees. They love bees, but wasps they're not too fond of. In this study, it used some word choices on what people thought about wasps and bees. Popular words for bees: honey, flowers, pollen, pollination. I bet there are other ones like fuzzy, lovely, enjoyable. Wasps include things like sting, annoying, dangerous, angry. They even throw personality onto these creatures. So there is a lot of this, but another thing that this study showed was the amount of research being done on bees as opposed to research being done on wasps. And this goes a little bit deeper into what master naturalists do. We try to educate folks. That's one of our missions, is to educate the masses. So from simply the research that professionals do on bees versus wasps, you can see that there's not a lot of public knowledge about wasps. But let's throw that a little bit on its head tonight. And this goes to a deeper point: good bug versus bad bug. You know, I did a presentation for a master gardener, and little did they know, they wanted to know good bug versus bad bug. Little did they know that I didn't talk about bad bugs. I didn't talk about bad bugs. I talked all about good bugs. And even things like our tomato hornworm. Anybody grow tomatoes? Anybody ever see one of these on a tomato? One, okay. And if you leave that guy overnight, it will decimate that plant. And I like to say, take it as a compliment. You are growing wonderful vegetables that these things utilize. And the public sometimes thinks this way, thinks that, you know, I want butterflies, but not caterpillars. I want flowers, but not weeds. So this is a little challenge that we have in our own personal perception of bugs, good bug versus bad bugs. The point is, all bugs are foundational in the ecosystem. Without insects, all terrestrial ecosystems crumble. Yes, they crumble. Without mammals, you know, ecosystems may persist for a little while, maybe. Without insects, an ecosystem collapses. This is just what happens. So as you get this question, I'm sure you will, about is this a good bug or is this a bad bug? Don't slap them in the face and say, hey, they're all good, but recognize the importance of all of them in the ecosystem. And while we're up on our pedestal of natural selection, our homocentric view of everything, you know, when I was giving a presentation on a little plant that I studied, someone asked an honest question: what does it do? What does this plant do? And it's an honest question. When we look at wasp, we might have that question: what does it do for me? What does this thing do for me? Wasps do stuff for us. So if you are growing garden plants or vegetables or flower gardens, they're controlling some of these pests. Caterpillars is what a lot of wasps eat or predate upon through parasitism as well. So they are a benefit to us. This one I really like. Have you seen this before? If you have a group of aphids on one of your plants, I want you to look closer at those aphids. You may notice some of them look a little plumper than others, almost turning a whitish shade. They're actually turning into mummies. This is a parasitic wasp, a braconid, that comes in here, it stings one of these aphids, lays a little egg in there too, and that little maggot starts to eat the insides of that aphid. They do this all the time. This is a specialized parasite or parasitoid of these aphids. So they're providing that service to us. You may have heard of emerald ash borer. Anybody heard of that sucker? Yeah, it is here. It is present along with us. There's actually a native wasp that utilizes emerald ash borer as a prey item. This is, Cercis, C-E-R-C-E-R-I-S, Cercis. So this little wasp right here is grabbing one of those emerald ash borers, parasitizing it. So it's still providing a function to the ecosystem too. It's one of the things that keeps bug populations in check are the parasites and the parasitoids. Things eat wasps too. We were having a lovely discussion about a praying mantis eating a little fly, and these little maggots started coming out of the fly. Well, those little maggots probably were a wasp that parasitized that, but wasps are food for birds, for other insects, so they occupy that level in the ecosystem too. There are even some moths that eat wasps. Did you know there is a wasp called this guy? This is the sooty wing Chalcolia, maybe? Pretty little guy, but did you know that caterpillars of this feed on paper wasps? And if you look closely at some of your paper wasp nests around your house, around your garage, wherever it might be, you may every once in a while see one of these moths hanging out too, about to lay some eggs, and that little caterpillar feeds on the larva of this wasp. Did you know that? Isn't that crazy cool? Yeah, one person did. Yeah, it's crazy cool. We have a moth with caterpillars that eat wasps. Something else too, some of our wasps are pollinators. Now this isn't likely as efficient as some of our super fuzzy bees, but the wasps with some buzz will grab some of that pollen. They'll utilize that pollen as protein meal, maybe for their larva. They'll maybe take a little nectar drink of that saccharose, that high octane nectar. They might use that, and it's wonderful with pollinators. Most of them are messy eaters, and the plant is, wants that. So you'll see all of the little pollen grains on that fuzz. So some wasps are pollinators as well. How many wasps do you see? Good, I like that answer. 6. Well, you're likely a predator of these things. And if it looks like it's something that stings you, you typically want to avoid it. Right here, there is one wasp, but one wasp, this Vespula up here, this is the only wasp on this page. So we have a fly, a hoverfly, another hoverfly, another serpent, a flower fly or hoverfly. We have, it's Hymenoptera, but it's a little different. A sawfly, and then right here, a beetle. So natural selection has looked at these hornets and said, whoa, this is a pretty effective way to stay safe. Some of our moths look like this too. So the clear wing moth, would you be able to tell that this is a moth? Well, if you're a bird and you see, you're mighty hungry and you see something that looks like this, is it worth it? Is it worth it to test out your appetite on a healthy sting? I'm not sure natural selection has utilized this mimicry to keep things safe. And these, yes, they are moths. And even look at the eyes on this sucker. This is one of our hoverflies, an eastern hoverfly that we have. And I just saw one of these earlier this afternoon at OS Great, actually. Mantid flies. Another insect that looks like a wasp. Look at natural selection is using a wonderful process to keep things to help in this struggle for existence. So this guy is looking a lot like a wasp to keep itself safe. So I talked a little bit about wasp. Well, what is a wasp? And this is a group that actually has some other things nested in it. We call it paraphyletic. So this group, Hymenoptera, hymeno, kind of weird. It either means membrane or hook. So the wings are sometimes hooked in some of them together, and it's also membranous. So it's kind of a little bit confusing on the etymology of this. But in this group, Hymenoptera, we have nested within it, we have our ants and our true bees as well. And your question may be, whoa, was the ancestors of our bees, our ants, and our wasps, was it more ant-like, bee-like, or wasp-like? And it was probably more wasp-like. And we'll look at some social wasps in a second and talk about that a little bit more. So looking at our lovely anatomy of a wasp, and it's okay to shudder a little bit if you do see one. They do look angry. I mean, they just have that angry look. And again, they're probably totally chill. I mean, they're probably totally cool. But you know, if you get too close to my family, I'll mess with you. So you know, you can see some of the different structures here. We have, as all insects have, the three major body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. All the legs and the wings are on that thorax too. Let's talk about maybe the most memorable part of a wasp, and that is the stinger. So you may have heard honeybees can only sting you once and then they die from that. This goes a little bit more to the shape of the stinger. And a honeybee, this is a barbed structure. So when it goes in, it stays in, and it's connected to a lot of the innards too. It's a modified ovipositor or an egg-layer inner. So that's what a stinger is. With our other bees, like bumblebees and most of our wasps, they have it modified kind of like an epidermal needle. So it can go in there and sting multiple times. So it can be, you know, again, a memorable structure here. But what's also fascinating with some of our wasps, especially our parasitizing wasps, look at the structure of this stinger right here. Pretty tremendous. That's going inside the bark, looking for some of those bark beetles to parasitize. And that's where she is laying those eggs in deep within that tree. And while we're talking about word choices, and I love Far Side. If you can't read it, I'll read it for you. It was foolish for Russell to approach the hornet's nest in the first place, but his timing was particularly bad. And up here it says angry hour, 1 to 5. That's good. This one also says, the action suddenly stopped while both sides waited patiently for the hornet to call. So kind of funny with our Gary Larson, that makes some beautiful natural history comments with his cartoons. But I like to use the word defensive rather than aggressive. So in your lovely experience of those 6 or 7 that were attacking you, they probably, well, they don't hate you. Okay, let me just tell you, they don't hate you. And Banjo, in your experience, that it didn't hate you. You were just too close to something. You were too close to something, and they were defending that. So I like to use the terminology defensive for some of our social wasps rather than aggressive. So it's just a little semantics thing, but for me, that kind of justifies it a little bit more too. That when I get too close to a nest or too close to an organism, it becomes defensive. It's not attacking me to keep itself, I mean, it's not attacking me out of vengeance or out of anger. It's protecting itself. It's defensive.
Every mama in the audience knows
You
what
know
you're talking about.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When we look at another one of the structures of our wasp, we can see our lovely compound eyes. And especially when you look at some of our Polistes, a social wasp here, you can see this lovely bend in the eye. This compound eye is made up of thousands and thousands of ommatidia, these tiny structures that all are vision forming. It's pretty amazing. But you can see how a wasp can see up and down. It's because of all of those ommatidia all over the place on those compound eyes. A neat thing too, and I wish I had some here to show and tell, but they also have these ocelli. And ocelli are used for some light and dark sensory activities, but also, I don't know what it's called, when a plane flies and it sort of regulates its flight. They use that sort of horizontal, I don't know what you'd even call it, that horizontal measurement or viewing. This is another purpose for, what do you say? Yeah, very good. Oximeter. Altimeter. Altimeter makes a lot more sense. Yeah, to see the altitude, to look at that horizon. That's another neat thing that perhaps those ocelli are helping that wasp see. How many wasps are there? Lots. Lots and lots and lots. And we don't even know exactly how many are out there. There are some entomologists that say for every insect that exists, there is a specific parasite of it, or a parasitoid in the case of our wasps. So there's probably a lot of wasps. We sometimes call the beetles as the most speciose group. And currently, yeah, we've named more beetles than other insect groups, but it's probably the wasps that occupy that top level of species. So let's look at a few different types of wasps. Again, there's thousands and thousands of species, and I'll talk about like 8. So the first one, potter wasp. A show of hand. Has anybody ever seen a potter wasp before? Yeah, you look at some goldenrod, those guys are still blooming right now. Look closer, and I bet you $1.25 that you're gonna see a potter wasp going there, getting some of the saccharose, but also little bits of the pollen. They're called potter wasps because they make these sort of ceramic structures here. They make these pots where they store their egg as well as a parasitized spider or whatever it might be. A good segue to that is a spider wasp. Has anyone seen that? I loved your point when you're like, that's what it was. You may have seen the lovely struggle that a spider wasp has as it tries to drag that juicy meal over a stick or somewhere. It's an incredible task that they do to take something as big as or larger than they are, bringing it up to their nest. That spider is still alive. It is still alive. I know, I heard someone say, whoa. It's nightmare fuel. It is nightmare fuel. I recognize that. But it stings this little spider and it drags it. And I know the spider is watching it. It's watching it as it is all happening. Not able to move its structures, and just, it's in there. And then when it goes into the cavity, it lays a little egg. And that little egg hatches pretty quickly. That maggot, that larva starts eating the spider while it's still alive. Incredible, incredible. You may have seen a show of hands. Anybody ever see a mud dauber before? Sure, mud daubers, they are present, they are here. You know, and if you want to, you could make a martyr for the lesson. But if you take down one of those mud dauber nests, one of those, not true nests, but one of those little clumps of mud, if you break that open, what do you see?
Spiders.
Spiders. You see bugs in there. It's the same mechanism that spider wasp moved. This is a spider wasp. It paralyzes spiders, bringing it over to their nesting cavity and then laying an egg onto it. Cicada killers, show of hands. Anybody ever seen?
Oh, yeah.
True or false? Cicada killers sting.
False. True.
True. If you grab a cicada killer, you know it. Or if you step on one, you know it. And it is intense. It is an intense pain. This is a toxin that it uses to paralyze a cicada. So it does sting. Now, it's not actively going to sting you. Venom and toxins like that, poisons, are actually very energy intensive. So, and I know I personify it, but a wasp doesn't want to waste its poison on you. I mean, it's utilizing that for its prey, for the thing that it paralyzes in the case of cicadas. So they're not actively trying to destroy you, even though they could through a sting. They're going for their specific prey. Some wasps are parasites of parasites. We call this hyperparasitism. These cuckoo wasps, one of the things that they do is they will see either a mud dauber or a potter wasp that follow it around. And when this guy brings a little spider to its area, lays an egg in there, the cuckoo wasp also lays an egg. This cuckoo wasp lays another egg behind it. And this cuckoo wasp maggot, the larva, will eat not just the spider, but also that young other wasp. It's a parasite of a parasite. Pretty damn cool.
Pretty cool.
We do have these as well, not this specific species, but we have in this family, in this group, actually in this genus, we have some of these wasps. What this wasp does is tremendous. It will find a cockroach.
Yes.
It waits by it, it goes over, flies, and stings it. It injects it with a neurotoxin. This toxin goes into the neural ganglion, into the processing power of that cockroach. What the cockroach does is kind of twitches out a little bit. But then the wasp comes back, and the wasp grabs the antenna, and much like walking a dog, it walks the cockroach. What does the cockroach do? Follows. Let's watch this together.
Oh.
Okay, so back to this play. This is gonna be a bummer.
There it is.
Okay, so you can start that. Okay, so you're viewing this wasp. It sees that, and look at those legs. That cockroach is walking. It's not just being drugged, it's being led. It is being led into its hole. So there you'll see it's walking into the hole. Look at those legs. It is walking. It's walking.
I hate cockroaches.
And look what happens here. So it's laying that little tiny egg inside there. What's also amazing here too, that cockroach is still alive, but it still has this neurotoxin in its neural ganglion and the brain of it. So it does not try to escape. I'm sure it could when you'll see in a little bit this wasp leaving. It doesn't cover the hole. It's open. So that cockroach, you know, if it was in its right mind, would walk right out. But because of this neurotoxin, it stays in there. Wow. Science fiction. Don't got anything on this. This is pretty dang amazing. And it's a wasp that does it. So a good question before we leave this. So where are these wasps? This is an Asian species. They're in Hawaii right now, but they're also in Florida. We do have a species of cockroach parasitizing wasp. It's in the same genus. I couldn't find the good pictures of it doing its thing. But one of the things that I think will be interesting to see in our urban ecosystem where we live, what I study, is this influx of new species. And we have a lot of cockroaches coming around. This is something that lives with us and amongst us, but also more people are moving in. Goods are being transferred and traded all the time. So stay tuned on when this guy pops up here. Speaking of parasitoids, velvet ants. Velvet ants, and oh, I heard the grimace. Yeah, so these guys do, another common name for them is cow killer. Cow killer has apparently an intense sting. I have not experienced it. You have, I take it. Yeah, it's very not pleasant. Very not pleasant. But a really interesting dimorphic relationship that we have here. We have a female on this side and a male on this side. So the wingless form, that is the female. This female, if you've ever seen a utilid or a velvet ant, you'll notice that they don't stop. They are constantly on the move. They're just running and running. What they're looking for are ground nesting bees. So they're looking for the holes of our ground nesting bees and ground nesting wasps. It goes in there, it lays some eggs. The maggots, the larva of that utilid or that velvet ant, basically utilize that resource, but that's why it's walking around so much. It is looking for those ground nesting holes. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of these. This group of parasitoids, they are usually species specific. So they're going to be looking for a certain type of bug or a certain type of, in some cases, plant to utilize to produce their offspring. So a lot of different species of these Ichneumon or Braconids. And then another wonderful one here. Look at plants. Look at plants closely. My good friend Kimberly Sasson identified one of these for the first time out here, just outside on one of the lacy oaks. First time known to science. Way cool. So these little wasps are utilizing a tree or a plant to form this relationship, to form their cycles. Putting a little toxin into the plant, causing that plant to form a tumor around it. Some people ask, can it kill the plant? I doubt it. I don't think so. And especially when we look at this one, what is that, an amphibolus of some sort? So this one right here, this is all leaf tissue. It is still photosynthesizing. So it's still producing that sugar, it's producing that process. Some of it probably feeds into that developing little wasp, but some of it gets through the vascular tissue of that plant, no doubt. Okay, now we're gonna get into one of the more memorable of our wasps, and these are the social wasps. Some people call it yellow jackets, and this is kind of a colloquial term for some of these things that are black and yellow are called yellow jackets. They call it a yellow jacket. I don't know if that's a good common name for it. I like to call these ground nesting hornets, but let's look at some of these social wasps together. We'll start out with our ground hornets. So these guys are true social wasps. So it is a colony that they form, and it's typically in the ground. So they'll find a decomposing tree and utilize that hole for their colony. Then we have our lovely paper wasp. This is arguably, when people think of wasps, this is what they usually think of. This is the first thing that comes to their mind, is this Polistes. We have a whole slew of species of these in north central Texas, and they are social. They're social as well. They make nests. So these things make nests. Yes, red wasp, also called, is another common name for them. Red wasps is this one on either the left side or the right side, depending on how you're looking at it. So they do form these nests. And the way that they do this is basically they find either a decomposing log or something more sturdy, a living tree, and they'll grind up some of that. They'll make mulch. They'll spit in it, form sort of a paste, bring it back to their colony and form these hexagons. It's really amazing, hexagons, and it can grow that way as well. The life cycle of these social wasps is pretty cool. It's pretty dang cool. With these social wasps, they're a little bit different than our honeybees in that any worker can become a queen. Any worker, female worker, can become a queen. They get these environmental cues or social cues, and they start producing babies. If that, what was once your queen, didn't come for a couple days, you are now the queen. So, and she is able to do that, produce offspring as well. As you're flipping over logs during wintertime, you might see some of these wasps. That's a queen that is hibernating as well. So a pretty interesting life cycle that they have.
Why do they always make a nest at my door?
So Sharon's asking a good question, and you jumped on my segue.
Okay.
So a lot of people ask, whenever I talk about wasps, what can I do? What can I do about these? And I'll be totally honest with you. There is an industry based on that question. There's an industry based on that question. How can I get rid of wasps? So they know, I'm not saying they know, but they go to a spot that's the most annoying spot. Be it a birdhouse, be it right there by a mailbox, be it in a space that you would love to normally go. How do you prevent them from being there is a valid question. And I gotta be honest, I don't know. I mean, some people spray, and that's one thing that some people do. Some people will knock that down. Some people will catch all of the wasps, throw them in the freezer. Okay, these things work. Yeah, I did that. Elizabeth was going to get the frozen pizza, and there were some wasps in there. Yeah, me. So yes, there are different things that some people even say blue paint on a ceiling will help. I think that's just an idea from people that sell blue paint. So there is a whole industry on how to get rid of wasps. If this is a question of yours, I encourage you to dig down here, but it's one I'm not going to spend any time with on how to get rid of wasps. There are ways to get rid of them, but recognize it as an internal battle. They'll come back. They'll come on right back. They get into a birdhouse. Yeah, that's a great spot for a nest. that persistence of knocking that down. Hopefully when a bird comes in, they'll do some of the knocking down themselves, but it is one of those eternal struggles that we have on this planet to live with our neighbors sometimes too. What I encourage you to do is look at them closely. Even Sharon, in the spot where you're like, okay, open the door like this, I encourage you to look at them closely. There are a few wasps that are really close to my the front door at our house, and very interesting about this. I actually watched them for a pretty good while. I just sat down and watched them, and to see this sort of colonial behavior that they have, this communication that they have when a new one comes in and they sort of feel them with their antenna. They're probably having some sort of conversation with them. Where you been? What'd you do? You know any cool prey? Can we go sting that person? Maybe they have this conversation. But I really encourage you to observe these guys from a distance. And it is pretty enjoyable to do that. If you want to mess with nature, wasps use landmarks, especially our ground nesting wasps. They use landmarks. What you can do, if you really are mischievous, you can put some rocks next to an active wasp nest and let it rest for a couple days. Then pick those rocks up and shift them over a little bit. Those wasps will come to the spot where you transfer those rocks to the center. They get tricked by landmarks. And what's also fascinating, this was a really cool study, that not just that, oh gosh, but the shapes. So this person, they used the pine cones in this study. They shifted pine cones over, but they took the pine cones and changed them into more of a geometric shape, in this case, a triangle. They took the circular ones and moved the circle over here. The wasp was looking more for the circle than the triangle. So amazing, mind-blowing stuff. Madison, go.
I don't know, so I've gone shopping a lot outside, and I don't know if I've ever seen like a wasp hole. Do you know what you would look for if you would want to know if it's?
Great question. So Madison, and I'll repeat that for folks on Zoom. So I want to see this. I want to try to do this. I want to jack with nature and do this experiment. So how do I find that hole? How do I find their nest? And I think it is, it's hard to find these on purpose. I think it's hard to find these on purpose. I like to go, some of the digger wasps will use sandier places. So I'll go to an area that has pretty deep sand and kind of just wait and look around and be sort of observant around there. It may take a little while, but hopefully eventually you'll see some wasps flying around or a single wasp flying around going into this hole. It's not good advice where I just say, well, Madison, look for one. It's like, where do I look? Where I like to go are areas that have a lot of sand. So on riverbanks, on some dried riverbanks, I like to go to some of those to find some of these nests. Now to find the ground hornet nest, you'll know when you find one. So you'll know when you find one. They are pretty defensive. They are pretty defensive when you get close to them. So they'll defend their nest. And sometimes those colonies can be quite large. Jim, yeah.
I saw one that was built into an old compost spot.
Compost.
That was just been laid on the ground for about a year. I didn't know it was there till my neighbor mowed close to it. And he started doing this funny little dance. We determined where it was.
Yeah.
And because I had small kids, I unfortunately had to encourage them to move someplace else.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, so it's one of those things that especially in a ground hornet nest, you know it when you see one. In some of these, like this was done with a digger wasp, which is a solitary wasp, so it doesn't form big colonies, but they found it in sort of a sandy spot where I normally see them moving around. So yeah, just be, observant. Okay, so hopefully you can observe them from a distance. There are some great resources to look up some of these wasps. We have a lot of wasps here in north central Texas and Texas in general. Bugguide.net is a great website, kind of like a virtual field guide or computer guide. I don't even know the last time I've given a presentation and not mentioned iNaturalist. Most powerful tool I've ever touched. You know, I studied gophers for my master's degree. I used a DNA sequencer, a multi-million-dollar tool that would analyze the nucleotide that is the building block of life. In my very biased opinion, this is by far a more powerful tool. A powerful tool in learning and engaging with nature. I'm just bonkers about it. In Dallas, Fort Worth, in the order Hymenoptera, yeah, it includes bees and ants too, but nearly 700 species we share Dallas, Fort Worth with to bees. So there's a lot out there. It's become one of my new favorite books, this one right here. Social Wasps of North America. Phenomenal book. I'll say this again. I'll echo it for emphasis. Phenomenal book. And I've changed a little bit of my viewpoint when it comes to field guides. You know, I don't really use a field guide anymore to identify things. Okay? I don't really use it to identify things. What I use it for is to flip through. And what's happening is my eyes are becoming acclimated on what to look for. So I am using this to train my eyes on what to look for. How many field guides do you have? Charlie, how many field guides do you have?
50.
You need more. You need more. I give full permission to go to Half Price Books, go grab a few more field guides. That's really something that's changed in me. From field guides as a tool for identification, instead a tool to train my eyes to look for things. So this is a great guide. It has some great biology stuff here at the beginning there too. There's several other ones as well.
Who's the author?
Sure, is Chris Kratzer is this individual's name.
You were so excited about it, I thought it was gonna be you.
No, that's right. $15 a little bit better. Okay, buy my truck. No, this is a wonderful book, Social Wasps of North America. And brand new too. What is this, 2022? So it's a brand new book, highly suggested. So you thought this was just gonna be fun and games today, huh? You have a homework assignment. What I am actually, let's do it. Yes, good, Zane. Okay, would you do me a favor? And on Zoom, go ahead and put your pinky up like this. Okay, everybody, please. I'm looking at pinkies, and I want you to curve it a little bit. Okay. This is a pinky promise. I am going to do this homework assignment. Okay, you can put down your pinky. The first thing on your homework assignment is going outside. Dude, if that is all you do, you get full credit. You get full credit. Step one, go outside. If you want to get extra credit or hopefully more engagement with nature, I encourage you, please look for some wasps. Try to find 5 different kinds of wasps. Do you think you could do it? Let's try it. Of 700, you think you can get 5? Okay, yeah. So there is your challenge. If you're one of the folks that are on iNaturalist, cool, you don't have to. If you do it for your own intellectual enjoyment of just going out, looking at some goldenrod, looking at wasps, totally cool. You get full credit. But if you're able to, taking some photos of some of these wasps, it may require patience to get close to them or to have them get close to you as you're watching some of these plants. If you take some pictures of them, upload them to iNaturalist. If you'd like to, you can tag me on at least your 5th kind of wasp. Great fun. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments about WASP? Zane, go, buddy.
Does it count if you already did this today?
Does it count if you've already done this today? No, it does not count, Zane.
Okay, I went to Park today for a school field trip and I saw like 4 different species.
Doesn't count. You start at 0. Okay.
During the heat and dry of summer, I noticed there were so many wasps around the bird bath. And so anyway, I looked at where they like to land. I kept that wet and there were, and I didn't get stung all summer. So I don't know if that's any good, but just kept them watered.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go
Just
back
phenomenal.
to the face of these guys.
They swim on the surface of my pool.
So they do drink.
Water.
So there are living organisms, they're using cellular respiration, they need H2O. Sometimes they'll get this through their food in prefixed form, but yeah, they will utilize those resources. If there is water available, they'll utilize that. In the case of our social wasps, sometimes what they do is much like bees, they'll fill themselves up and then fly over to the nest and disperse that drink around. So they'll do that. I know, isn't that a great society? It's like, oh, cool. Will you throw up some water in my mouth? I'm pretty thirsty. So they are utilizing those resources too. Sometimes they'll find your hummingbird feeder as well. That sugar of your hummingbird feeder, it is used to feed nature. And some people get bent out of shape about this, but if you can, observe it. Utilize that as a learning opportunity to learn a little bit more, maybe even getting close. And I like what Bill said, is when they were feeding on water, when they're drinking up that water, you could get pretty close.
Yes.
They're focused on drinking water, so you can take that opportunity and observe them as well. Good point. Yes, ma'am.
There, do you listen to KERA?
I do, yeah, all the time.
So in September, there was an episode of Think where she interviewed somebody about wasps. And it's called Wasps are Pests Worth Protecting.
I love it. So again, I'll repeat that. So Chris Boyd, Think, has a great program, wonderful program where she interviews authors and all sorts of stuff. But there's one, do you remember when it was?
September 16th.
September 16th, so fairly recent. So it's going to be a recent search that's all about wasps. And they are pests to protect.
Pests worth protecting.
Pests worth protecting. So check that out if you get the chance. And real quick, before I leave that, there is something happening on December 3rd. I will make a plug for it. There is an insect appreciation workshop. So we are not alone in this room of people that like bugs. There are people that like bugs outside of this room. There are people that like bugs that aren't yet master naturalists. And this is a workshop for them, but also for us. So December 3rd, I'll be throwing out a lot more information about this. It's going to be at, Mountain View, thank you. Mountain View College, so that's over close to Irving. So just stay tuned for more information. Saturday, December 3rd, 9 to 3. We're going to have some different people talking about different types of bugs. And we're going to try to promote it on like Art and Seek too.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to try to get the word out. So stay tuned. Yes, you had some questions.
I love seeing wasps on my flowers as pollinators.
Yeah.
How do they compare to bees as their pollinators?
A good question. So how does a wasp compare to a bee when it comes to pollination? So Mary Beth asking this great question. And most of our wasps have some buzz. There's some buzz, and probably the purpose for that buzz, it might be to insulate it, might be to help it from some of the ectoparasites around. They're not as fuzzy as most of our bees, so they're probably not as efficient pollinators as our bees, but there is definitely pollination occurring. Any bug that has some hair, has some buzz visiting a flower, it's going to be picking up some of that pollen.
So they're eating the pollen. Are they eating the pollen?
Either the pollen or that high octane saccharose, that nectar. So either or, sometimes both too. So a good question. Are wasp pollinators? Sure. If they're fuzzy, they're likely a pollinator.
We have a like question.
Okay, great.
How do you keep them off areas you don't want them?
A valid question. So how do you keep them away? And it is a good question. It's a valid question. How do we manage some of the things that we live with and among? It is a struggle. It is always a struggle. It's something that will always pop back up. So one thing I have heard, and I don't know how well it works, but a lot of insects, in particular our wasps, communicate via chemicals. So pheromones, they have sensory, antennas are basically all chemoreceptors. So I've heard that some people will use a mint spray. So a spray of a mint, of like peppermint or whatever it might be, and spray that area if you knock down that nest on a cold morning or a cold evening, knocking down that nest, putting some spray of that mint, if you want to go more of a holistic approach, that might be something that could help with that. But also, I hope that as we get sometimes frustrated with the location of their nest, that we can also use that as an opportunity to observe them every day as we're observing them to try to get inside the house. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am,
I'd
please.
just like to add that a water hose is good because it doesn't kill them, but it can deter them, or maybe they might not be right near your door. They might be, do it a few feet over.
Good point. And I'll repeat that. So a water hose is another effective tool for all sorts of things. A water tool, so using that as a spray to hopefully wash down that nest. You could definitely use this. Another thing too, I talked about aggressive versus defensive, and sorry if this is giving you headaches when I scroll here. They are poikilothermic or ectothermic. In other words, whatever the outside temperature is, that's what their internal temperature is. So if it is hot outside, all of their juices are flowing. All those muscles are ready. If it's cold outside, it takes them a little while to warm up. So if you do use either a hose or a spray or a broom, try to time it with the weather. So time it with the temperature. Do it on a cold morning, cold evening, and that might be more effective. Yes, sir.
Back talking about the stings. Have you ever seen any of those YouTube by Coyote Peterson?
I have. Yeah, so Brave Wilderness is the name of this YouTube channel. And this dude, he goes out and he gets bitten and stung for our enjoyment. So he exaggerates a little bit. He definitely exaggerates a little bit for the show. But yes, Brave Wilderness is the name. Coyote Peterson. I have a colleague that actually did the alligator snapping turtle stuff with him down in Houston. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
Do they sleep at night so you can take the nest down?
Good question. So they are diurnal, or they're active during the day. So that, if I go back to our social wasps. So as at nighttime, they will sort of, I don't want to really call it sleep. I don't even know if they're really shutting down their neural ganglion or anything like that, or just, waiting. But they are diurnal. So they're going to be active during the day, during the sunlight hours, and not active at night. So is that a good time to knock down the nest? Well, you're going to wake them up. It's like, are you asleep? I think, they probably are. They were. So yeah, I time it a little bit more with the temperature than the clock. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions?
This is just a comment. Certain pest control companies send around, in my experience, it's been 2 different occasions, 2 very young men to try it, door to door, to give me the opportunity for them to get rid of my bees and wasps. And I said, why would I do that? And I've blown their minds by saying, I'm a Texas master naturalist and I do not kill wasps. I like wasps. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and honestly, we face an uphill battle.
Yeah.
It's an uphill battle on how we can live with our neighbors. Sometimes our neighbors can be kind of annoying, but fine, but hey, they live next to us. So how do we do it? Do we wait until they move off, or do we find ways that we can live with them? And also encouraging the rest of our neighborhood to recognize that sometimes annoying neighbor. It is an uphill battle, and I commend you all on being master naturalists. The master does not mean expert; it means dedicated. So, in things like this, and what's the value of wasp? What does it do for us? This is a question that the public asks. So we have the opportunity to say, well, wasps can actually do a lot for us. Let me tell you about it, and then talk to them for an hour and a half.
I remember reading something about how they make their little nest the perfect shape. Is something with their little nest? What is the story on that?
Holy moly. So this is, I really could go deep in on this, and it's kind of stoner talk. But it's perfectly a hexagon for both the surface area of heat exchange. So it is a lot more than just that looks pretty. This has got a lot of physical properties of it. For the various heat exchange, for gas exchange, it needs those angles in there to be the 6 shape. It gets a little bit into, oh, what's it called? Fibonacci's number. Fibonacci's number. It gets a little bit into that, these patterns that we see in nature. You know, biology is applied chemistry, chemistry is applied physics. So they are using this physical structure for that heat exchange, that gas exchange. It's pretty amazing. How do they do that? Is this with their antenna? You know, it's sort of like, what is that, a stencil that you sort of move around? Yeah, right, exactly, like that. I don't know, but it's well worthy of appreciation. However they do it, it's quite cool. Anybody else? Yeah,
Just a comment.
please.
You mentioned the blue under the eaves.
Yeah.
From a family that has had a cabinet fossil accumulate since 1963, that has about an 18-inch overhang around the cabin.
Yeah.
A contractor probably about 20 years ago said, oh, I'm gonna paint under the eaves blue, that'll keep all these nests down, because it was a constant battle.
Yeah.
And I've only, since I've kept the blue underneath there, the cabin is gray and the underneath the eaves is blue, I've only taken down about 2 nests.
There you go.
So it does work, and the contractor said that they don't have dimensional vision, so when they look up and see blue, they think it's sky.
Going to those selling. Interesting. And you've got some blue paint to sell later? That's right. Yeah, and Dogwood Canyon, the Audubon Center at Dogwood Canyon, they have blue ceilings too. So, and I don't know if I've ever noticed any wasp nests there. I don't know if this is more anecdotal or if there is some reality to it. I'm not sure, but maybe that's another. So we have a sample size. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? So one last question. Actually, Banjo, would you sacrifice your time for a question here?
I have no problem.
Okay.
Will they defend themselves against a non-human predator?
Good question. Oh, I love that question. So will wasps defend themselves against something that's not human? Yes, absolutely. So this behavior that they have to defend that nest, that is not a recent development just from our, bipedal walking around throwing rocks and stuff. That is a defense. That's a behavioral defense that they have for anything that gets close. So other bees, other birds, larger critters, mammals. Sharon was just saying your dog getting close. Yeah, they will defend that nest for those creatures.
What about one-on-one? If it's, a bird, and if it doesn't get killed right away, will it defend itself to this?
That's a good question. I don't know. Normally what I've seen is if a bird gets close, it doesn't take long for it to get far. So I mean, it's gonna make that pretty instantaneous decision. Nature also is using this look. Again, this is not an accident by natural selection to have other things that don't sting look like things that do sting. So this may be a defensive mechanism, not just to the predators, but to anything. Anything that fears the wasp is going to fear things that have these vibrant colors of black and yellow. So I don't think this is an accident that natural selection has selected for these species that look like it. One last one, Banjo, real quick, yeah.
I was wondering what the largest, I want to say hornet.
Yeah.
Social hornet.
Yeah.
How large are they in their nest?
So the colonies, how big are those colonies?
And the largest of the wasp family, the hornets.
Yeah, so it could be.
I don't know if in America we have that.
Yeah, so. Yes, so there's talking about another YouTube channel. There's a guy that removes bees and wasps, and he sometimes goes to massive colonies. So this is a timing thing too. So the longer a colony is there, the more nutrients that are available outside, the larger it will become. So I don't know an exact number for you, but they can get big. Those colonies can get really big. And if left to themselves, they can keep growing and growing and growing. After a certain bit of time, either environmental stimuli or lack of nutrients or whatever it might be, that colony may split off, or I don't even want to call it like a rebellion. or anything like that. But, you know, other queens will pop out too, to spread those genes around. And maybe that can restrict the size of that colony a little bit, but they can just grow and grow and grow.
And they repeat, I've never seen one repeat, you know, it's home.
Say again?
I've never seen a, group of wasps come back to the same nest ever, so. do they have-
Yeah, and I think when a queen dies and another worker becomes the new queen, I don't know if her new task is to form a brand new colony or to take those relatives with her. So I don't know if that happens. I'm sure this book mentions it. So again, I'm not selling these, but I'm sure. Yeah. Guys, thank you all so much for your time. I've got the longest possible email address. The state gave it to me right there. I'm arguably more active on iNaturalist than I am on my email. Sam Biology is my username. So thank you all so much. And you remember your challenge. I'll leave up the challenge slide. Cool, Sharon.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
There's this challenge. Before I start reading out numbers, I think there are a couple of announcements. Yes.
We built a 4-foot pool monarch koi fishing 6 years ago, and now we're having to rescue the plants because they're going to demolish the garden. And Frank Keeney sent out an email to everyone, and he told us about talking to Sam Naturalist, and he did a job with the email. So if you'll just check the email for details on that, it will be this Friday and Saturday morning from 9 to 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Melinda?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, we had our urban field trip this weekend and there was a COVID exposure. Most of the time we were outside, and we did send out an email that covered it, or there was an email that was sent out. I didn't actually send it, but in case somebody missed the email, we spent most of our time outside, so luckily, but if anybody needs more details, you can see me or email me. And
thank you.
Hope everybody's doing great.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other announcements?
If anybody needs to order a name badge, let me know. They're $3.95. Need a replacement.
That's Debbie over
I'm
there.
Yeah.
The annual meeting starts later this week. Brent is going to present. What is it, Brent? Is it? Wasps. All right, Sam, I want your next program to be why we need scorpions.
Well, I'll be presenting at the conference. I'm actually going to be using Dipson's word. It's going to be called mofos. So convincing the park not to mow. How do you do it?
Okay, so, all right, so the official part is over. I'm gonna read numbers. If I read your number, go over there and pick out an item. I'm gonna read the last 3 digits, 413. I'm gonna talk as loudly as I can. I just read 413.
Whoa! Jam.
438. There's a kitchen. Yeah, there's a kitchen back here too. Oh, 432.
That was a quote.
443.
441. 421. 449. 399. 399. 433. 433. 418. 418. 416. I didn't get 2 minutes there. 416. 414. 407.
425. 425. 452. 452. 422. 422. 419. 401. 396. 396. 402. 402. 400. Number 400. 428.
Is there anyone who bought a ticket whose number has not been called? Is there anyone who bought a ticket whose number has not been called? I just, there are many left. Go get a prize.
Yeah, I will.
Oh.